John Lewis, for those of you who don't know, is a Democrat Party hack. John Lewis was, in fact, beat upside the head, as he has described it. In fact, when Clarence Thomas was nominated by George H.W. Bush for the Supreme Court, John Lewis was one of many on the left that were beside themselves. He went to the floor of the House. He's a congressman from Alabama, from Georgia, near the Atlanta area. And he went to the floor of the House, and he said, I have been beat. But I can impersonate him perfectly, but I'm not going to do that because that would be misunderstood. Because you can't mimic, you can't imitate. I mean, they can have Alec Baldwin out there all day on Saturday Night Live making fun of Trump, but you can't do that kind of thing to a liberal, particularly one they think is an icon. They'll come at you with charges of racism and bigotry and all this. But he went out there on the floor of the House and he said, I've been beat upside the head, but it doesn't mean I'm qualified to be on the Supreme Court. He went to the floor of the House once. He's been living off what happened to him in Selma for all of these years. But he has become, since, nothing but a Democrat Party hack. He's nothing but a reliable, uber Democrat Party partisan who I don't believe has the moral authority that has been granted to him. And once again, we're back now to what I'm going to get into later with the help of Shelby Steele. But why does this happen? And it's all about liberalism and their icons and how they essentially try to shut down debate and permit otherwise morally unfit people to have moral authority and make statements usually against Republicans and or conservatives. John Lewis did not think George W. Bush presidency was legitimate and said so. And he's applauded and he is held up and put on a pedestal as a great hero, one to whom we should all listen. He went to the floor of the House back it was in the 90s when the Republicans ran the House and there was some budget bill. I forget what the legislation was, but John Lewis goes to the floor of the House and does a speech using words that were used in another famous speech about the Nazis. They're coming for our children. They're coming for our grandchildren. They're coming for our moms. They're coming for our dads. They're coming for... And he was equating the Republicans with the Nazis in World War II. And the left applauded, and what a great man. We need to listen to this man. He knows what he's talking about. Simply because he's one of the remaining survivors of a protest march with Martin Luther King across the Pettus Bridge in Selma. And if you look at how he has behaved since he was elected to Congress and throw out his claim to fame in the Civil Rights March, the guy's a Democrat Party hack. Some people have even described him as a fraud. John Hindrocker at Powerline. He's been coasting on his 50-year-old reputation for decades. Andrew Breitbart exposed Lewis as a liar when he claimed to have been subjected to racial epithets by a crowd outside the... Oh, yes. Remember the congressional black Caucasians and the left, prior to the vote on Obamacare, decided to march in front of the Capitol building because there were a bunch of Tea Party people there protesting the vote. So they marched, and they did it on purpose. When the march was over, Lewis said that he had been spat upon and called the N-word. And there was an investigation undertaken, and none of it happened. It didn't happen. Didn't matter. The left continued to report that it did in their effort to impugn and besmirch the Tea Party. Didn't happen. That's the kind of fraudulent stuff John Lewis has been engaging in. But you don't say this. Civil rights icon, untouchable. He's permitted to do anything. He's permitted to say anything and be granted senior statesman, elder statesman status, because this is one of the many things that we're up against that's wrong. Because any criticism of John Lewis or Barack Obama or anybody has been paralyzed by virtue of race.